Chapter 10. In the morning, we went to the chicken coop to get some eggs. It was a little scary, honestly. The chickens were bigger than I expected and gave me really nasty looks. All of the eggs were different sizes and different colors, which was surprising to me. I just assumed eggs were white, but they were all shades of brown and gray, and a few blue eggs. We came out of the coop into the misty morning. I saw what looked like a tiny brown barn hidden behind some trees. "What's that over there?"
"That's the ham shed," she said.
Ham shed?
"Yeah, the shed where we store the hams."
What, is it like refrigerated?
"I'll just show you."
So we went to the ham shed. It was surrounded on all sides by rosemary and sage. She opened the door, and dozens, if not 100 mesh bags were hanging from the ceiling. It was not refrigerated. I had heard of this before, but had never actually seen it. This was country ham, when I had been used to a city ham. So this is all salted and left to dry?
"Yep,"
she said. "Nice," I said. "That's basically what we did last night. The salt draws the water out."
"So we made mini hams? No wonder it was so good."
I walked through the hams to give them all a look. This is crazy. "How long do you keep these here?" I asked.
"We usually rotate around half of them every year. We give them out to shelters and stuff every Christmas."
"You give these out? So you're like, actually a good person?" I blurted out. Her expression changed.
"I don't know. What's that supposed to mean? You were hanging out with me all this time thinking I'm a bad person?" she asked.
"It's just, your philosophy seemed nihilistic, objectivist, like a cold social Darwinism. Dog eat dog, survival of the fittest, that kind of stuff."
"Sure," she said. "What does that have to do with giving out hams?"
"I guess, like, why would you give stuff to people that can't do anything for you?" I asked.
"You're overthinking this. I don't get into all that. Besides, what did you think we did with all these? What, you think we can eat all of these hogs? Wasting good food is a sin, you know."
I guess that would have to be a good enough answer for me. I was a thinker, she was a doer, I suppose. We went to the barn to get some milk. The cows were much, much bigger than I expected.
"I'm making you do this," she said to me. "I hate doing this."
"I don't really know how to do this," I said.
"Okay, so that dangly thing there?"
She pointed at the cow's udders.
"Go ahead and grab that as close to the top as you can."
Something about the way it was shaped and the way it felt was very wrong. But I did as she asked.
"Now squeeze and, roll your grip down, I guess. Yep, right into the bucket like that. You're squeezing milk out of the milk bag." Ugh, I can't watch. I can't even look at that."
And she left me to milk the cow. Gutting the hog was no issue, but this was too much for her to handle. It was awkward. Squeezing white liquid out of such a thing put thoughts into my head. It actually became kind of therapeutic once I got into the rhythm of it, though. It wasn't like in the cartoons where they just pulled on the thing and milk came out. But the way it felt in my hand was weird and not something I could get over. I understood why she didn't want to do it. She came back with another bucket, but this one had a mesh bag in it.
"You get it all?"
"I don't know," I said. She dipped her head under the cow and observed it.
Sure. I'm sure it's fine. Let's take the quad over to Davy and switch out the milk."
"Oh, so he has some from, yesterday, I assume?" She nodded.
"Yeah."
"So, how long does it take for the cream to separate from the milk? I know fresh milk separates, but all I ever had was pasteurized, homogenized milk."
"I don't know. Overnight?" she said.
"Should I make biscuits?" I asked. She was astonished.
"Whoa, you can make biscuits?"
"Yep. We'll have fresh butter and buttermilk. Heck, if you have a grinder, we can even make some sausage gravy. We can run and go grab some sage from the ham shed." She smirked at me and gave me a little nod.
That sounds a lot better than just eggs to me.
She kept bringing it up over and over.
Sausage gravy? And biscuits? I don't know what you can do to make me like you any more. Massage, medic, and cook? Jeez, you're like the perfect teammate. Sausage gravy? Sausage gravy. And biscuits. Gosh, I need to do something for you. I'm so useless.
Don't say that, I said. You're doing all kinds of stuff. Heck, you're the one that got us the meat. If it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have any meat. No meat, no sausage.
No, you shot one too. You've still done more.
I put my hand to my temple. Oh gosh, I did shoot one, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. I was surprised, actually,
she said.
You were a decent shot for a day one shooter.
Well, we were using your gun. I don't have a gun.
First, we need to change that. Second, that was my uncle's gun. All I did was show you how to shoot it. I don't think I want to teach you anything else, though. If you're just as good a shot as I am, what good am I? You know?
I suppose, I said. I could always show you some massage techniques, if you wanted.
Oh? I suppose it would only be fair, huh?
She nudged me with her elbow. We poured the milk into some jars and loaded them onto the quad.
Hold on to those, okay?
She said as she hopped onto the seat and took the handlebars. How am I supposed to get on this thing? I asked. There was only one seat.
Never ridden one of these? Just straddle me. If you feel off balance or nervous or anything, just wrap your arm around me.
My heart jumped. Oh. Okay. So I did as she said. You don't need a license to drive one of these, do you?
Shut the hell up,
she said.
I know how to drive this.
Despite her claims, I felt the need to hold on to her the entire time. The quad roared as we ripped up the driveway and onto the road. Her hair tickled my face the entire time as it bounced and flowed violently in the wind. Every tiny bump made me feel the need to grab her even tighter. We rode into what I thought was a junkyard. Old cars and trucks and vans, sinks, piles of wood, washers and dryers, broken windows, and all other kinds of indistinguishable rubbish. But much to my surprise, that was where we stopped. Davy's house was an old shack hidden by all the trash. Mandy didn't even do so much as knock. She just walked right in and opened the fridge. "What are you doing here?" someone asked.
Mind your own business, Dougie,
Mandy shouted. I turned and saw an emaciated man who had obviously had a hard life, based on the condition of both his face and body. "You're in my house. It is my business," Dougie shouted back. She grabbed a few bottles of milk and put the fresh ones in their place.
Fine then. We'll leave.
"I never liked you, you know," Dougie said.
Not many people do,
she said, as she gave me the milk and walked out. "I wonder why," Dougie shouted as we left. "Get on," she shouted at me as she hopped on the quad. I didn't even have any time to ask anything. She put it in gear and let it rip. The ride back was even scarier than the ride there. We took the milk inside and started preparing all the equipment to make the sausage. Grinder, herbs and spices, all that. Visiting Dougie seemed to put Mandy in a foul mood, and understandably so. Of all the people Mandy knew, I really had only met Lily, and only had been half introduced to Davy, so I hadn't seen what she meant when she said people didn't like her. It was a little jarring, honestly. Though I came from a fairly nice neighborhood, and nobody ever really fought in my family. I couldn't imagine someone saying they didn't like someone right to their face. I just never thought that was a thing that actually happened. I wanted to get her mind off of it, though. "So you've told me about your uncle. Do you have any other family?" I asked.
Not that talks to me,
she said, shoving the meat down into the grinder.
Family reunions never went well for me. My sister was always more popular. My parents tolerate me during the holidays, and that's about it. No cousins that talk to me or anything. What about you?
I took some sage, salt, and pepper and seasoned the ground meat. My family gets along well, I said. I took the bottles of milk and skimmed the cream off the top. Do you have a food processor here?
Yeah,
She said, and she pulled the food processor out from a cupboard.
what are you doing with that?
It'll make the butter making process go faster, I said.
Huh.
So I poured the cream into the food processor and let it do its work. Mandy watched the cream swirl around in the bowl, looking with a discerning, if not skeptical, eye. I got to work measuring out the flour, baking powder, salt, a little sugar, and an egg. She was engrossed with the cream spinning in the food processor. Her eyes didn't move from it. Before long, the cream started to thicken into whipped cream, then separated into butter.
Why is this happening? She asked. You just turn the cream into butter by mixing it?
I figured I would explain. Yeah, when we mix it a lot, the fat molecules clump together and separate from the water in the cream. Now we have to wash the butter.
Wash the butter? She asked.
So we fished the chunks of butter out of the buttermilk and put them into a bowl of cold water, and folded the butter in on itself. The water turned cloudy, so we drained it and added more cold water, and repeated the process until the water ran clear.
You had to wash the butter? She asked.
Yep. Now let's throw this in the freezer for a minute, and we can get the sausage cooking. So we threw the sausage into a cast iron pan. Admittedly, the cast iron had not been taken care of very well, but it was serviceable for what we were doing. We let the pan get hot, and we threw the sausage in. I put Mandy in charge of breaking it up and stirring it while I dealt with the butter. I cut it up into small bits and worked it into the flour, then put in the buttermilk and egg, then formed the biscuits.
How in the world do you know this stuff? She asked,
chopping away at the sausage. Just doing it a lot over the years. After you do it long enough, you sort of just know. You get a feel for it, you know? Once the sausage was browned and the fat had rendered out, we sprinkled some flour onto it, just enough to absorb the fat. We turned the heat down a little, and stirred the sausage around for a couple of minutes to fry the flour a little bit. We turned the heat back up, then poured the milk into the pan. It bubbled up briefly, and we took the pan off of the flame. As one last finishing touch, I pulled a special spice out of the cupboard.
What's that? She asked.
Nutmeg. I sprinkled probably a half teaspoon into the sausage gravy. She scrunched her face.
What's nutmeg? Isn't that like cinnamon?
No, it'll be good. Trust me. Once the biscuits were done, we sat at the counter across from each other. Mandy took a bite of the sausage gravy and biscuit, and struggled to keep a smile off her face.
Okay, that's really good.
Told you. It was pretty good. I used a little too much salt in the sausage, but I could have used a little more salt in the biscuits, so it kind of evened out.
Wow,
she said.
A medic, massaging, cooking boy? Can I keep you?
I wasn't sure if that was a relationship proposition or not. I still didn't think I knew her well enough to move to that step. But then again, it was vague. In the moment, I blurted out, "Sure." After we had finished our breakfast, which was really more like brunch by the time it was actually done, we figured we should head back to the city. She offered me some eggs to take home, but I didn't have a stove in my apartment, so they really wouldn't get used if I took them.
There's a ton of stuff to do out here. Maybe you'll come back with me sometime? She asked.
Yeah, that sounds nice. So we loaded up into her Buick and drove out. The ride back seemed longer than the ride there, for some reason. We pulled up in front of my apartment complex. I hopped out of the driver's seat, and Mandy got out to take it. The thought of her driving made me nervous, since the one time I drove with her, she ran someone over.
So you work overnight? She asked.
Yep. Once I get a good reputation, I think I could move to a different shift. But it's overnights for me for now.
Dang. All right, well, text me and let me know how you're doing, okay?
Sure, I said. She sort of awkwardly stood in my way in the street. Her posture indicated she might have wanted a hug. But suddenly, from behind, I heard someone shout, "Gus Butler sends his regards!" And then, bang, 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 bang! Bang, bang, bang! Then the screeching of tires. I turned and saw a black SUV rushing down the street.
Jace, Jace, Jace!
Mandy shouted.
You're bleeding!
I turned back to look at her, and her purple hoodie was soaking red.